What's going on with the military Pentagon budget? How big is it, and how big does it need to be?
We are spending more on the military than at any time since the Cold War. In fact, it's even bigger than the Cold War budgets. We spend about $600 billion on our military. It was spiked up after 9/11, and it's never come down. It just keeps going up.
What's Russia spend? Do you know?
Russia has about, hold on, I think I know this, about $100 billion total. China, that's the second largest budget.
Yeah.
China comes in somewhere around 60 billion. That's the third largest budget.
I've heard
So
a number like
we dwarf everybody else's
Yeah, if you
budget.
take like 5 or 6,
Seven.
Seven,
Actually,
is
the
that
next
it?
seven.
the next 7 countries, our military budget already now, before this 54 billion extra,
Yeah.
is bigger than the other 7
The next
countries.
7 combined. And by the way, 5 of those 7 are our allies. So when you start looking at our foes and
Right,
you put our
yeah.
allies and our foes together, there's really no contest. It's like 10-1 how much we and the NATO allies, Japan, South Korea, spend on the military compared to any possible adversary. So the idea that you need more money for defense is just refutable on the face of it. It's not money. Money is not the problem. It's the policy. It's what kind of forces are we fielding? What kind of weapons are we buying at what cost? What is our strategy? None of which we heard in the president's address to Congress.
And aren't there still a lot of duplication among the services in terms of planes that they're building and buying and
Yeah,
or-
there's still competition for mission. I mean, we still
Yeah.
have a Marine Corps that wants to gear itself up for an amphibious landing, even though the last amphibious landing we did was in the Korean War. Successful, true, but it goes away back, and
Yeah.
the Marines insist on having their own fleet of planes, their own
Right,
fleet of
yeah.
the Osprey, this very expensive, troubling aircraft. This is the aircraft that crashed in the Yemen raid, $75 million a copy. Yeah, there's a lot of duplication, and you
So-
see the troubles with the F-35, the new fighter, which costs about 10 times as much as fighters used to cost in the 60s and 70s.
Barack Obama used to talk about a smarter, leaner military, right? Like a more effective, more functional military, right? There was never talks about blowing the military budget through the roof or necessarily, doing away with it. But, I mean, I guess what I'm trying to ask, Joe, is like, is it necessarily smarter to just beef up all this military? Is it like a show of force? Or is it just what are we trying to accomplish here by spending all this money on stuff that we don't use?
Well, you're making the swamp very happy.
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about the swamp in Washington. A very, very large part of it is the Department of Defense swamp, and there's a very simple reason for it. Half of all discretionary spending. So of all the spending that the Congress actually has some say over, what they call discretionary spending, half of that is Department of Defense, and the rest is everything else. So this is a big chunk of money. A lot of people make a lot of money selling weapons, selling programs. So they're thrilled that the president wants to give them a 10% increase.
But the idea of almost every among particularly conservatives, Republicans, is everywhere else you got to be efficient, you got to be lean, you got to be mean. But when it comes to the military, it's just throw money at it.
Yeah,
more money.
And here's the particularly insidious part of the president's plan. Let's say the Department of Defense budget, this $600 billion, is represented by a carton of eggs. So you have a carton of eggs, there's 12 eggs in it. Take one of those eggs and throw it away. That's the State Department budget. The State Department budget is $50 billion, so it's 1/12 the size. And what the president is saying is he's going to pay for the Defense Department increase by cutting state, by slashing state 30%. Wait a minute.
30%.
You
right.
slash it 30%, so you get $15 billion from that. But you're increasing $54 billion. So even the draconian cuts to state, which would cripple our diplomacy, don't even get you close to the increase. So you got to keep cutting. So he wants to cut EPA, Environmental Protection Agency,
by 20%, according to the Washington
20%.
Post.
It would
Right.
gut the environmental protection. Oh, this is the president in favor of clean water and clean air. Nobody cares more about clean water. Well, that's why he's gutting the clean air and clean water people. But that still doesn't get you any place. That picks you up maybe a billion. So you still got to keep, and you realize that this plan is just going to cripple the rest of the government in order to pay for a military increase that we don't need, that will almost certainly be wasted.
Where's it coming? Are the generals in the Pentagon Demanding more money? I mean,
They're demanding the Department of Defense appetite is insatiable. I mean, you can never give them more money. There's always something. There's always something you want. You know, when you go to buy a car, do you want power windows? Yeah. Do you need power windows? Do you want Sirius XM? Well, you know, there's a never-ending list of things that would be nice to have, and if nobody's saying no to you, they're going to keep demanding them.
But he's such a good businessman, Joe. This seems like basic economics, right? Of just like taking money away from other things, ignoring them, abusing them, to fund something that we don't need. That just seems like bad business.
I think it's good salesmanship. I mean, this is what's going on. It is bad business, but look what he's selling. He's selling strength, right? So what does he do yesterday? What does he do in the State of the Union? He's strong. Yeah. I'm going to restore our military. This myth that something is wrong with our military. There's nothing wrong with our military. We're not crippled. We're not weak.
Sadly, it's also good politics. I mean, the American people are idiots to believe this, but they always believe all these Republicans get away with it. We're going to beef up our military. We're going to make our military stronger, bigger. We're going to throw more money at the Pentagon. Everybody applauds. His crowd, they all applaud. This is great. This shows how strong we are. And laugh all the way to the poorhouse.
And sadly, the Democrats tend to try to avoid this issue.
Yes,
we're all in favor.
Right.
And so some of them, like the ones on the committee I used to be on, the House Armed Services Committee, they're all for it because this is money that's going to go into their districts. The people on the House Armed Services Committee represent districts that profit from the defense spending.
Now, you know this field better than I, but I remember reading that during World War II, Senator Harry Truman was head of a committee.
Absolutely.
That was looking at waste in the Pentagon and identifying programs that could be cut and should be cut in the middle of World War II. Right?
He put generals in jail. He
really?
put generals in jail, yes, because they were making defective products. There were motors, engines in our planes that weren't working, defective uniforms. He put people in jail and was proud of it. We need Democrats like that again.